The following program is sponsored by Adams Financial Concepts. Welcome to About Money, a different approach to investing you won't hear anywhere else. Your host, Mike Adams, is a registered investment advisor and works with investment portfolios exceeding over $100,000 in net worth and has a proven track record of managing long-term investments, surpassing the markets in the long term. The information shared on the following program is for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. And now, here's Mike.
So, welcome. We are The Answer About Money here on Saturday. We're with you on Saturdays every Saturday from noon until 1. We're going to continue to do that. Coming up in June is the Money Show. I've been talking about this a little bit, but the Money Show is coming to Seattle. It's the first time it's been here in many, many years. I'll be speaking at the Money Show. I'll be doing 3 presentations. I'll be talking about, and you've heard this before, but I will be talking at the Money Show about how the secular bull market will end. I think it has a tremendous application to what you're doing with your investments, because if you're not ready for the way it's going to end, it's going to be a bigger issue than the Great Recession of 2007, 2009. And I'm not trying to scare anyone. I'm not trying to be negative about the whole thing. I just believe in the Boy Scout motto, be prepared. And it's always better to be prepared for the worst and hope for the best. That's one session I'll be talking about. How will this secular bull market end? And I think we've got some years to go before that all happens. The other 2, I will be talking about how to deliver superior returns and with minimizing the risk. So I'll be doing 2 sessions on that. You can go to the Money Show. Log into that, the Money Show Seattle. There you'll find a registration form. You can fill out the registration form. It's free. You don't have to pay anything for the Money Show. All of it is free. It's paid by the exhibitors. I know, I am an exhibitor. But so are some of the big firms, the Fidelities and the Schwabs, and many of the big firms. Scott Trade is there. A lot of trading activity going on. There's a number of cannabis companies that are there. They seem to get a lot of traffic. There's oil and gas. There's a number of exhibitors. We're a small exhibitor way in the back. But anyway, you can find us. Steve Forbes is going to be there. He will be one of the keynote speakers. Ralph Acambora. Maybe some of the last times we see Ralph Acambora. I think Louis Navellier is going to be here. Edward Yardini, who I think is probably one of the best economists. Larry Kudlow was scheduled to be here. I'm not sure that he will be here. His plans kind of changed this week with the trade talks. So anyway, we'll see how things are going. Please come out. Please register. They expect about 2,000 people. And I was in Orlando. They had almost 4,000 people. I'll be in Las Vegas this coming week. They expect 4,500 for the Las Vegas show. So those shows have been going on for a number of years. So you get a much higher attendance at those shows. But in Seattle, maybe 2,000 people. Come out and see. You'll be hearing a lot of experts, technical, fundamental. You'll be hearing economists. You'll be hearing strategists. All of that is there, and it's all for free. So anyway, come out to see the Money Show. So let me turn and talk about what we're going to be talking about today. You know that 40% of Americans cannot meet a $400 emergency. If they have a washing machine that goes out, they don't have the $400 to pay for it. If they have a car that breaks down, they don't have the $400 to pay it. $400. Think about that. $400 is out of the reach of 4 out of 10 Americans. We live in the wealthiest country in the world, and yet 40% of our people, 40% of our citizens cannot afford a $400 emergency. The biggest worry among all age groups is outliving their money, of having no money for the last few years of life. They talk about the golden years. For some, it will be the olden years. They'll just be old. You know, in 1975, 88% of all private sector employees had a pension plan. Today, fewer than 33%, fewer than 1 out of 3 employees of companies have a pension plan. That's a significant difference, and that's a significant difference which will be coming up as we approach the end of this secular bull market. Now is the time to prepare. You know, not only that, not only are people not focusing on retirement plans, there's a lot of other costs that are coming for baby boomers who are going to be retiring, and some millennials as well. But there's a college education cost. For baby boomers, it's paying for their children. For millennials, it's paying off the loans that they took out to get their education. For baby boomers, as they approach the ages of 60 and 70, they're also facing the cost of assisted care. Assisted care now runs $50,000 a year. That's a chunk. Where do you have it? Add to that 23% of millennials are still living with their parents. 23%. You know, when you add all that together, we're living in an age in which the financial pressure is tremendous. There's no question about why the biggest worry of every age group is, will I outlive my money? You know, when my father was looking at retirement back in the end of the 1960s, beginning of the 1970s, he was 62, he was 61, looking forward to his 62nd birthday. His company had a pension plan, but one of the options was a 5-year annuity. A 5-year annuity. The money would run out in 5 years because most people in the 60s and 70s didn't live much past 5 years on retirement. Didn't live. They died within 5 years after retiring. You know, today the estimates are that for a person who is averaging $75,000 a year, to have 80% of that for 20 years means that they need $1.2 million. To be on track, a person age 40 needs twice their annual income. Age 50, 4 times their annual income. Age 60, 6 times their annual income. And age 67, 8 times their annual income. Now, that's all assuming that they're going to run out of money by the time they're 85. They're not going to live beyond the age of 85. The reality is, if you're 65 today, your life expectancy is past the age of 85. Yes, half the people will die before then, but half the people are going to live beyond that. Half of the people, if you use those statistics to plan your retirement, you will run out of money. Not only that, that 80% assumes you're going to be healthy toward the end of your life. And health cost is the number one cost for people at that age. It assumes you're going to be healthy. You're not going to have to dip into principal to pay healthcare cost. And it assumes inflation of less than 3%. You know, if you look back at the 1960s to 1970s, inflation took 70% of the purchasing power of the dollar. $1 in 1961, by 1982, would only buy 30 cents worth of goods. Now, I'm not saying all this to be negative. I'm saying all this is something that gives you time to prepare and know where you need to be. You know, the reality today is people spend more time planning vacations than they do retirement. There's 703,000 401k plans, and the average person that's in the age of 56 to 61, the average amount is $163,000 in their 401k. Think about that. What they should have is 6 times or 8 times their income. They have $163,000. The average person has an income of only 56,000. The average income is 56,000. That means they have half of what they need to live only until they're 85. The numbers are just horrifying. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. You have a chance. If you're in that category, you have a chance now to plan and be ready for retirement with a significantly higher fund. But if you do what most people are doing, you're going to run out of money. The average person 32 to 37 has only 31,000. The average person 50 to 55 has 124,000, but they need at least twice that, if not 4 times that. You know, we're living a lot longer. The life expectancy of babies born today is that the life expectancy is to be 100 years old. By a child born today, somebody will probably live to the age of 142. We're not talking about that. We're talking about making it through the 90s into the hundreds and not running out of money ever. That should be the focus of where you want to be. Not 80%, but at least 100%. We're coming up to a commercial break. Don't go away. And we've got big news coming. We'll be talking about that in the next segment. Don't go away. We've got a lot more to talk about this subject. It's a very big subject and very important. I'll be right back after this break.
More about money coming up with Mike Adams on AM 1590, The Answer. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. About Money continues. Remember the website, adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's Mike.
So we've been talking about retirement and the needs for retirement. So one of those needs is Social Security, and I think it's kind of humorous that Denmark is concerned about running out of money, not having enough young people to pay for older people. And the government of Denmark is running ads on the radio and on TV that's asking citizens of Denmark to have more sex on vacations because they need more children. The government is encouraging people to take vacations. Do it for Denmark is what they're saying. If you look, what that means is worldwide, we're seeing a change in demographics. We talk about disruptive companies, but what we also have is disruptive demographics. Survey shows that men 18 to 35 living in their parents' basement are saying they have a good life. You know, what's happening is we're seeing people change. Once they retire, they have changes going on. For many, they have financial ability to continue to live. Their physical ability is good. You look at the number of people around that are in their 60s and 70s and 80s and working when they're in their 80s or working in their 90s. They're not working because they need the money necessarily, although some do. 40% of men say they plan to continue to work until they drop. I have to say, I'm one of those. It's not about the money. It's about meaning in the social activities, connecting with people. I don't want to sit home and play online poker. I want to be doing things and contributing and helping clients achieve their goals and help clients so that when they reach a retirement, they'll have the funds they need. The gig economy, working independently, we're seeing a significant increase in that. And we're seeing a significant increase in people taking online classes. People in their retirement years still working, making and managing big decisions, managing complexity and managing the end of life. You know, the most Google searched for search back at the time of the dot-coms, the biggest search was for day trading. Prior to that time, it was about sex. After that time, it was about sex. But you know what it is today? Since 2004 through today, the biggest number of searches on Google, has been for anything relating to retirement. That says something significant about the demographics that are changing. The forecast is that by 2043, the demographics of this nation will look exactly like the demographics of Florida. Think about that. The number of older people. And with that, we're going to see smart appliances coming into effect. Medical technology is going to monitor our vital signs. We're going to have mirrors that analyze our face for wellness. All that's coming. There's a company manufacturing toilets in the UK that will take what you deposit in the toilet, analyze it for your diet, and then will send a shopping list to the grocery store to have groceries shipped to you, the things you need for your health. Think about that. A smart toilet. That's a company that actually exists in the UK. Those things are coming. Not only is that, but in 1970, 17% of people lived solo. They were solo. In 2010, it's 27% of people are living in single-person household. In Seattle today, it's now 42%. We're living by ourselves. Companies like Walmart and Target and others are experimenting with small urban formats. And I said 2043, it's actually 2037. The makeup of the U.S. population will have the same demographics as Florida. We're becoming a usership economy. People will be renting their living space. They'll be renting cars or using the car services like Uber and Lyft. They'll be using things like Airbnb. You can now hire people and give them a list. We were in Costco. My wife and I were in Costco. And there was a woman who had a list. She was shopping because she works for a company where you just log on, give them your grocery needs. They go, they shop, and for a small fee, they deliver your groceries. Companies will do the shopping. People will come to your house. We're living in a very changed society. But what that really means is that you have to have the funding to be able to have a quality of life, to live the golden years and not make them your olden years. Which brings me to the next thing. I want to introduce Shane Hoover of Hoover Capital Management. We've signed an agreement, Adams Financial Concepts and Hoover Capital Management, to begin to co-manage 401k plans. I think it's a great deal. We're going to house the plans at Adams Financial Concepts, but we're going to be working those together, sharing revenues, sharing oversight of those plans. So with that, I want to introduce Shane because he is our guest today. Welcome to the program, Shane.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it.
So why don't we start with your background?
Okay. As briefly as I can state it, I graduated from the University of Washington in 1995. Knew that I wanted to get into finance shortly thereafter. Began at John Hancock Mutual Life Insurance Company. Essentially realized rather quickly that I was much more interested in the investment side than I was the insurance side. So shortly thereafter is when I met you at our, the first firm that I had worked for, which was Dane Bosworth.
And that's where we did meet. I'd been there for a couple of years when you came in as a new
as a rookie. Yes, as a new rookie. And I think that you had then moved on to a different firm shortly thereafter. It was RBC now is what the original Dane Bosworth has become. But by 2004, I reached a point where it just made more sense for me to go out on my own, start my own RIA, Registered Investment Advisory firm, similar to what you did. And
I did it in 2005. So
there you go. The timing was great. It was one of those things where it just seemed to make sense for me and for my clients. And basically, Hoover Capital has been in business since 2004. And of course, always like you do, we're always striving just to reach out and help as many people as we can. And you and I touched base earlier this year and began discussions about how we can help more people, more employers. They kind of go hand in hand. Most people focus a lot primarily on just the individual person's retirement plan, but a lot of employers don't necessarily know what hidden values there are for them as well. Anyway, as you know, we've begun a joint venture, and we're hoping to help as many people as possible.
So let's talk about 401k plans. Go ahead. I'll let you talk about 401ks.
Okay. Well, your earlier monologue, just the main thing that I want to stress to most people is the part if it didn't hit home with them is simply the preparation. The statistic that you stated where the single biggest concern of all people of all age groups is outliving their money. We don't give a lot of thought to, preparing for our retirement. It's a lot easier to, we're all busy. There's a lot of things going on. And hey, that could be 10, 20, 40 years down the road. So, let's worry about today, and we'll get to tomorrow. That seems to be the trend where most people are going, and hopefully with shows like this, people can actually start to focus a little bit more on, hey, let's tuck away a little bit, at a time. And there are ways with people that currently do have a 401k plan, they may be able to maximize their retirement savings in a way that might not even occur to them. Something, for example, if there's a corporate match, a lot of people don't take advantage of that. And that's the single, we can talk about returns, and that all of those things are very important as well, but there are some basic things that most people can do that they likely aren't even aware of that can be extremely helpful in the future.
And it's important. It's hard for a lot of people to see, I need to do something today when I plan to retire 30 years from now or 20 years from now. It's, thinking that far ahead in the future for most people is something they don't do. They look at what the needs are today, and especially if they don't have $400 for an emergency, but they need to do that.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that if you can just shift your focus a little bit on maybe just budgeting a little bit better, that obviously the more you can tuck aside, the better off you're going to be. But even just starting with something small, you might be surprised at just adding a little bit, each time. It's not really going to affect you all that much. You can give up a couple of little perks here and there and just get going on the game plan. And I think that once you see your accounts begin to grow, you'll have less stress. You'll have better financial feelings about where you stand, and then it, ultimately in the best case scenario, it starts to snowball on itself, and your concerns are much alleviated. But it's just small steps to start with.
And I think we're coming up to a commercial break, of course, but I think when we come back, I think we want to talk about the impact of the 401k on the company as well.
Absolutely.
It's the number one concern. Fidelity did a study and found that it was affecting 57% of the people, and 28% said it affected the work that they do. They were losing productivity. So we'll come back to that and talk about it right after this commercial break. Don't go away. And do register for the Money Show. We'll be coming back right after this commercial, and you want to hear more of what Shane has to say, and we got a
More
lot.
about money coming up with Mike Adams on AM 1590, The Answer. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. About Money continues. Remember the website, adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's Mike.
So I'm here with Shane Hoover of Hoover Capital Management. Hoover Capital Management, Adams Financial Concepts have entered into agreement where we're going to co-work 401ks. I think it's a very, very valuable service, and I think it's a very important service, considering that 40% of Americans don't even have $400 for an emergency, considering that 28% of the people said that it affects their work and their productivity. I think for employers, it's very, very important to think about their 401k. Anyway, I'll turn it back to Shane. We can talk about the way that 401ks are usually approached, what's the benefit to the employer, and we'll go from there. Go ahead.
Okay, great. I'll tackle that second one first because I think that that's also an important distinction that a lot of employers don't necessarily think about. The hidden value to a lot of employers, they might think, well, I mean, there's a cost associated with this, and it might be difficult to try to determine, whether or not that makes sense. But when you're talking about the basic statistics of things along the lines of an employee is 5 times more likely to stay with an employer if they have a retirement plan. Just the productivity that can be advantageous to employees that feel more financially stable. That's also, again, it's financial stress that doesn't bring its way into the workplace quite as much. So there's a lot of things that are actually quite helpful. And of course, that's not even getting into the hidden cost savings of not needing to go out and hire, recruit, or try to attract new talent if your employees are anxious to move on to the next best thing, or if they just need to get to somewhere that they might get a raise, or again, it's the whole thing, the benefits that are involved. Healthcare is obviously a big one, and a 401k is a huge benefit for employees. So what Mike and I are trying to do is we're trying to help the business owners help their employees feel that financial alleviate any financial strain and help them reach financial success.
And I guess that a lot of people that are listening, a lot of the employers that are listening today, have seen their an employee or 2 or 5 or how many leave for 50 cents an hour or $1 an hour more. I mean, they focus on their salary rather than the total benefit package. And if they have a poor 401k or no 401k, there's no reason for them not to leave for an extra buck, right?
Absolutely. Those are, again, when we talk about hidden costs, those are things that you can't really put a finger on and say, hey, you know what, Joe employee left because, why did he leave? Perhaps you never really know. There's some statistics out there, that might symbolize some of those things, but I think a business owner typically has an idea as to, why an employee might happen to leave. And if you are a business owner and you happen to see that for something that might seem trivial to you as to why some employees are leaving, again, as Mike said, 50 cents an hour, even $1 an hour, if it's, something where, you have a 401k plan for your employees, it's entirely probable that you won't see somebody leave for that amount because they will actually see a retirement plan growing, and that will alleviate a lot of the financial stress that the employee happens to have. So something as it sounds as simple as essentially just making sure that, well, let me backtrack. A really nice thing about having a 401k plan is that the employee, it makes it very difficult for them to go and spend that money frivolously. So they do see an account actually growing, a balance growing, and that's hugely beneficial health-wise. Again, I keep talking about the stress, but there's a significant factor in what it does for somebody when they have an account. They know they can't touch it until retirement, but they know that they have money. And if they have some money that's tucked aside, one of the statistics you said before, 40% of Americans can't pay for a $400 emergency expense. When you know that you have some money tucked aside, it's hugely beneficial, and I don't think that most business owners actually recognize how beneficial that is.
And I think, coming back to it, you and I both have our own companies, and then as you look at it, if you're talking about marketing, or if you're talking about producing something, you look at the return on investment. You look about how much you're spending on marketing and what the effect is. You're looking at what the increase in sales are. You're looking at if you're manufacturing something, what the cost of goods sold is, and if it makes sense. You talk about a company like Costco, if they don't turn over a product within 30 days, they don't renew it again. Companies look at that all the time, and yet when it comes to a 401k, they look at it as just a cost that goes out the door. What you mentioned about the whole thing of return on investment and looking at reducing turnover and saving that cost, I don't think many business owners really think about their 401k in that respect. They think about the fees or the funds or the fact of whether they have somebody who's a fiduciary, but they don't really look at the return on investment or what we think is the preparation for retirement, the returns that they're receiving, and the return to the owner. Those are the things that seem to be important.
Right. So for the listeners, Mike and I, we've had these conversations, and he just touched on them. The 3 F's, so to speak. Those are the fees, the funds, and the fiduciary responsibility. Those are some quite easily tangible things that most business owners focus on when they're looking at a 401k plan, because they're easily tangible. But the fees themselves don't really, that they may in fact be the least important aspect of the plan. Obviously you want somebody that offers competitive fees, but you definitely, like, you get what you pay for. You don't necessarily want to just go with the cheapest person, because that person might not actually give you the value that you are seeking. But because that's a number and you can compare that number against some other number, and all things being equal, that's a very easy way to evaluate things. But that's just a very, very small piece of the puzzle. So those three F's instead. Mike, do you want to talk about the 4 P's? Because the 4 P's are most likely what people should be focusing on.
Sure. So, we talk about preparation for employees. The 401k plan was set up in 1972 for replacing the defined benefit plan, the plan that most people had prior to that. And the idea was to give employees the right or the ability to set aside funds for retirement. That was the whole thing. Is the 401k is set and targeting the employees. It's not for the employer, it's for the employees. It works well for a lot of employers as well, because they're able to set aside money for retirement. But the key thing was it was focused on the retirees, the people that were preparing for retirement. So we talk about the first P is preparation for retirement. The second P we talk about is the performance, because it makes a huge difference. A 1% difference in performance will mean a 17% difference in the return at the end. Think about what 2 or 3 or 4 or 5% will do to total performance. So performance is one of those key things that makes the difference between whether someone's going to have enough or they're going to have a shortfall. The other P that we talk about is participation. The majority of plans have fewer than 75% of the employees who are participating. We would like to see 90% in our plans, or maybe even more than that. If somebody's not participating, they're not even getting close to preparing for retirement. One of the things that we do for our retirement plans is we do an outcomes-based or a gap-based annual review for every single participant. So that means they get to see if they're going to have enough money to meet retirement. That comes out, it's what, a 20 or 25 page report? Sarah prepares those. She knows.
We've shortened it now.
They're shortened some, so they're not quite 20 pages.
More accessible.
And then it's about the 4th P is the most important for, or at least important for the owner, is the profitability, the return on investment. How much you put out compared to how much you get back. I'm a business owner. You're a business owner, Shane. we know that if we're putting out money, we really want a return on that. It's not that we're not good guys. We're really nice and we're really good guys, but we really want a return on that investment. And that's how a 401k should be treated, is it should be a profitable investment. It should get a good return on the investment. Those are the 4 Ps. The focus on the 3 Fs, the fees. Fees are really obvious, and it's easy for financial advisors to the plan to talk about fees. And there's all sorts of things that are coming at the benchmark. Every plan now can be benchmarked on how it compares to the average in fees, but they don't compare it to how well it brings a return to the owner. That's more difficult to see. It takes some ability for an owner of a company to see this is what you're making on it. It's not how much goes out. It's how much that comes back in.
And the profitability, Mike, is what you were talking about. Maybe after the break, we can discuss how business owners can see how effective their 401k plans are.
Okay, and we are coming to a break. So I get carried away.
More about money coming up with Mike Adams on AM 1590, The Answer. For more information, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. About Money continues. Remember the website, adamsfinancialconcepts.com. Here's Mike.
So, a lot of times on this program, when I'm introducing a guest, I'll mispronounce their name. They have to correct me. There is something that I did wrong when I introduced Shane. He is Hoover Capital, not Hoover Capital Management. So that's my mistake. Don't look up Hoover Capital Management. Look up Hoover Capital. That's who he is. So anyway, I apologize for that. I get kind of carried away when I'm talking about these programs. I don't completely check my notes, and I just run off the top of my head, and my mouth gets to run, and I mispronounce, and I add things that aren't there. So I'm sorry.
No problem.
So let's go ahead and talk. We were talking about the 4 Ps, the 4 Fs, but there's a lot of this that's available to employees to gauge their 401k plan. There is a way that we can gauge it through a Judy Diamond, and maybe you want to explain Judy Diamond.
Yeah, thanks. So a lot of the time when people are focusing on the 401ks and they talk about the individual participants and, how should they have their money invested? What do their investment options look like? That's what a lot of people are familiar with. To the business owner, again, we've talked about where a lot of these things don't seem particularly tangible. They focus on the ideas, the fees, for example, that you can compare one number to the other and think, okay, that one's better, that one's worse. But when you're talking about how effective your 401k actually is for you as a business, as the business owner, there is a way to go engage that with the filing documentations that need to be done annually. Those numbers and those statistics get aggregated and can be pulled. There's a firm, Judy Diamond, that we can pull the data on the plan, so you can determine. It actually spits out a score that tells you, okay, here's sort of how your plan compares, and it gives you gauges of things like, what is the participation rate? Are people effectively utilizing a corporate match? If a corporate match is available, how many people, how many employees are actually using it, who are underutilizing it, and all of these various things that essentially can let you know whether or not your employees, again, to the business owner, the real hidden advantage is that the employees are all getting the maximum effectiveness out of that. So if you were able to know and you can see, hey, wait a second, maybe we could be doing something better in order to most effectively utilize this benefit for our employees, and we can essentially see a snapshot of what that happens to be, and maybe help fine-tune or tailor the 401k business for the business owner. Or if it's doing fantastic, we'd be able to let them know that as well.
I mean, one thing that most business owners don't realize is the tax form they have to file on the 55, it's called the 5500. That's public information. An employee can see that. Financial advisors can see it. And people like Judy Diamond compile those and sell the list to people like Adams Financial and Hoover Capital. It's all there. That means it's there on the internet. It's accessible. And so if employees are really looking, they can compare your company to your competitors. They can see how you do compared to your competitors. I don't know how many real employees do that, but I wouldn't be surprised if there aren't a significant number that look up their 5,500. And as we move forward in this information age, I will bet there'll be more and more. And it won't take very much for a news article to come out and say, do you want to know about your 401k? You can Google your 401k and see what your employer is paying, see how it stacks up, and how it compares to the other firm who might be offering you $1 or 50 cents more an hour. That's all available on the internet. It's public information.
And as we're talking about this, as listeners might be able to guess, if you are a business owner and you would like to know what sort of scores your 401k has, we'd be happy to speak with you about that. Obviously, that would be something that we would like to do, and we could give you our input. No fee, no obligation. We'd just be willing to give you some advice. Not everybody is either willing or wanting to necessarily make a change, but I think that if and when any business owners might be looking to implement something like this, or if they are potentially not happy with one, two, maybe more things with their plan, we would certainly like to be able to compete for that business at some point in the future. But we can definitely give you guys some information about what you might want to be working on if that's something that would be useful for you.
I have to tell a story because early on when we started doing the 401k business, one of the guests on our radio show had me look at their 401k. And so I looked, and the 401ks through Judy Diamond and some of the other services are scored on a point basis, 0 to 100. And their 401k was at 24. I can remember that. So I told him it was at 24. This is what was the issue with the whole plan. My hope was that the person would have come to me and we would have opened the 401k and we would have made it a lot better. But I looked at it 3 years later and the score had moved from 24 to 90. They never went with us, but just knowing what that score was meant that he could deal with that. And by the way, the company became a lot more profitable. Now, whether it was because of the 401k and increasing the score, whether it was other things he was doing, at least he understood where things stood with the 401k and with the employees in the plan. So anyway, story, for me it had a bad result because he didn't open an account with us. But for him, it was a good result.
Well, we're business owners, so we obviously know that not everything always works out as favorably as you would like. But the good news is that you did a very good thing for that business owner and for all of the employees. So it's essentially a win in the aggregate, and obviously you doing the right thing as you always do, that pays off in the end.
It does. And it's good for the business. It's good for businesses to know what's going on. It's one of those things in which a lot of businesses don't really pay a lot of attention to. It becomes one of those expenses that has to flow out, and they just let it flow out and don't pay attention, and they think if they have a financial advisor, the financial advisor's taking care of it. I can't tell you how many times that we've talked to people who didn't even know as a business owner that they were a fiduciary. They thought that everything was taken care of by the financial advisor. Just not true.
And for example, if you have a 401k in your plan, I ask this all the time of people that have 401ks. Who is your advisor? And probably 95% of the time, maybe higher, the employee doesn't even know.
Yeah.
So that's a service that's going underutilized.
Anyway, thanks for being on. It is Saturday, and we will be back next Saturday because when it's Saturday, as they say on Meet the Press, if it's Saturday, we're going to be talking about money.
You've been listening to About Money with Mike Adams, a registered investment advisor. If you'd like more information about what you heard today, or about Mike's investment philosophy and strategy, or if you'd like Mike to evaluate your own portfolio, click on adamsfinancialconcepts.com. That's adamsfinancialconcepts.com. The information shared in the preceding program was for educational purposes only, and any investment advice given may not be suitable for all investors. Join us again next Saturday at noon for more About Money with Mike Adams, here on AM 1590. The Answer. The preceding program was sponsored by Adams Financial.